What is the one thing that keeps us all connected? Language. A language is a complex phenomenon. Defining it is even more complex. Nearly everything that defines us as a human has language in it. Language is a unique human gift. Every idea, religion, culture has its foundation in a language. A language expresses something about identity, about our place in the world. Language defines cultures through the people who speak it and what it allows speakers to say. The relationship between language and culture is as old as mankind. The foundation of the great Indian culture is based on the Sanskrit language. It was the language of science and spirituality. Sanskrit means a refined code, where Sama stands for equalized and Krit means cut, or in other words, a code. India then boasted a galaxy of astronomers, mathematicians and scientists. Sanskrit enabled the researchers to express scientific ideas with great precision, logic and elegance. Since the Renaissance, there has been no event of such worldwide significance in the history of culture as the discovery of Sanskrit literature in the later part of the 18th century. One of the most significant researches done by the Western scholars is in the field of computer programming. Modern computing owes its origin to Panini, a sage who is believed to have lived around the 5th century BC. Panini is credited with having created the Ashtadhyayi, which is a grammar defining the structure and syntax of the Sanskrit. Sanskrit is taught in many South Asian studies and linguistic departments in Western universities. Leiden University in Netherlands is one of the first universities in Europe to start its research on Sanskrit as early as 1865. In an interview with Mr. Peter Bishop, professor of Sanskrit and ancient cultures of South Asia in Leiden University, he tells us more about study of Sanskrit in Europe. He is also a member of the international research team preparing a critical edition of the Skanda Purana. Let us hear what interested him to study Sanskrit.
What motivated you to study the works in Sanskrit? Like, what intrigued you about it, sir?
Well, I should maybe start with explaining how I started off.
Yes,
I
sure.
started off doing a BA in philosophy, Western philosophy in fact.
Okay.
And then I encountered a teacher who taught a course on Indian philosophy. So my initial interest was in Indian philosophy and Buddhism.
Okay.
And then I soon realized that to properly grasp Indian philosophy, I would have to learn Sanskrit.
Yes. Okay.
And so then I took up Sanskrit,
yes.
besides my philosophy studies.
Okay.
And well, as I was progressing in Sanskrit, I got intrigued with Indian culture in general.
Nice.
The linguists in Europe consider Sanskrit as a fascinating language, a language in which the genius of the human civilization was perfected to its fullest. People study Sanskrit as it holds a prominent position in Indo-European studies.
So now, going into the Sanskrit in the European universities, so could you talk about the study of Indology?
Well, I'd say the proper study of Sanskrit in
Yes.
European universities starts in the 19th century with the establishment of the first
Yes.
chairs in Sanskrit.
Yes.
Initially, that meant mostly programs which were dealing with classical Indian society.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the emphasis was on classical Indian culture.
Okay.
Nowadays, you see that more and more programs are also moving into modern or contemporary aspects.
Okay.
So if you look at programs where Sanskrit is still well part of the curriculum,
Yes.
then it's one language next to other languages.
Yes. Okay.
And so, for example, in Leiden, I'm teaching Sanskrit within a program called South and Southeast Asian Studies. So besides Sanskrit, there's also Tibetan, there's Hindi, and there's modern Indonesian.
Okay. 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 That's great, sir. Could you also tell us about the various research done?
Well, there are, of course,
Over
many
there,
different
yes.
types of research
Yes.
projects. I would say that in Europe in general, also if you compare it to the United States, in
Yes.
Europe there's a strong philological tradition. That
Yes.
means there's a strong tradition of textual scholarship,
Yes.
and that means preparing editions, critical editions on the basis of manuscripts. Yes, so quite a
Yeah.
few researchers with whom I work, they are working on the basis of manuscripts
Manuscripts
and
of the
preparing editions of
Okay.
these texts.
Okay.
The first seeds of Sanskrit study in Netherlands was sown by Johann Hendrik Caspar Kern. Kern was a Dutch linguist who was a professor in Sanskrit in Benares in India.
Professor
So,
Kern, who took up the first chair of Sanskrit in Leiden.
Yes.
That was in 1865. So in 1865 the chair of Sanskrit was established, and it's still there to the
Yes.
present day. Kern is a typical 19th century scholar, which means that he was a polymath. He covered many fields.
Yes.
So he covered Sanskrit, but he also covered
many.
Prakrit. He was also a scholar of traditional Indonesian culture. But for Sanskrit, he's mainly known for his work in Buddhism. So
Okay.
he's translated and edited some Buddhist texts, and also for an astronomical text.
Okay.
That's the Birhat Samhita of Varaha
That's right.
Mihira,
Yes.
which is a very important and influential
Yes. Yes.
work
Yes.
on Sanskrit astrology.
The Friends of the Kern Institute, or the VVIK, organizes lectures and discussions on Sanskrit biannually in the Leiden University.
That's a symposium we organized about 1.5 weeks ago,
Yes.
which was devoted to the subject of the study of Hinduism in the Sanskrit tradition. So we looked at the historical development of Hinduism and the role of Sanskrit and Sanskrit texts
Okay.
in particular in that.
Okay.
We had 7 lectures. We had about 80 participants, so it
Okay.
was a big event.
Okay.
It was mainly about the role which Sanskrit texts and in particular Puranas have played in
And
the
role of
spread and development of Hinduism.
Yes, sir.
Though Sanskrit has been the most unique identity of India in the world arena, Sanskrit is almost a forgotten language in India. The scope of the language is limited to religious ceremonies. It is strange that people at large are ignorant about Pingala's work contains the basic ideas of the Fibonacci series and the Pascal's triangle. How is that the Indian society underwent a collective memory loss in less than 3 centuries? This change started after the British imposed a Western-style education system in India in the 19th century. Noted scholar Professor Vidwan Ramchandra G. Bhatt, the Vice-Chancellor of S. Vyas Deemed University, has more to say on the state of Sanskrit and the secret sciences in the contemporary world.
As time passed, Sanskrit scholars only they have forgotten the real core part of Sanskrit, which was the real source of science and philosophy. That is the Vedas only. But people simply they started composing poetries, appreciating some kings, some rulers. That is how that slavish mentality of our people, our own ancestors, caused so much loss. That shift caused so much downfall. Shift. It was a mental shift. Science and philosophy was paramount for our people because our people were essentially research-minded people.
The popular misconception is that the Sanskrit language is only a language for mantras in temples. Though Sanskrit is known for its religious texts, it has more applicability with science. Scientific literature in Sanskrit is extensive and elaborate on diverse subject matters.
Literature is not at all Sanskrit. Sanskrit is only, it is another name for science and philosophy. Philosophy also it is not for simple preaching. It is life related. It is spirituality. Because spirituality in the sense it is awareness of consciousness. Now we call it science of consciousness. Science of consciousness was the main subject area for philosophy. So philosophy and science, they are the main treasures of Sanskrit. That Sanskrit we have forgotten. Gradually, relevance of Sanskrit also got lost. Sanskrit it is for science. Sanskrit is for our ancient technology. You know how the best quality of gold to be prepared. How can you know this one? It is only from Dhatu Shastra, which is in Sanskrit. That much high quality gold and iron, steel and all these things they could produce, our people. Do you say that they were not knowing technology? They were knowing. They could know that knowledge, it was very much pertinent in every house and every ordinary man was knowing that one.
Sanskrit enabled common people to invent new things. Take the example of Vimana Shastras. Vimana Shastras are the Sanskrit documents which describes the technical know-how to build a flight with impeccable accuracy. Babuji Talpade, a Sanskrit scholar from Bombay, was able to build the first unmanned aircraft based on the Vimana Shastras 8 years before the Wright brothers. Conspiracy theorists believe the Nazis' successful research on the Vimana Shastras is the answer to the mysterious UFO sightings all over the world. The implosion technique mentioned in the Vimana Shastras was the subject of Victor Schauberger's research on building advanced engines.
Many scholars from German mainly, they came to know that India is the treasure house of ancient knowledge. That is why they told their people to search all those treasure houses. Now the situation is like that all those most valuable manuscripts were taken by them. They are available in Heidelberg, Germany. Such very rare manuscripts are available in the London Library. If you go to Scotland, Edinburgh, we have wonderful ancient treasure houses. There we can get manuscripts. The best and very rare manuscripts are available in two places now. One is it is Heidelberg, German, and another one is it is Edinburgh in Scotland. Our people gradually they lost their interest, and because of slavery also our people they lost money. That was our mind. But they could know that one. That is how we lost our treasure house. Now if you go to all these centers, they have all centers, more than 400 research centers are there now, all over the world. There are some good research centers in India also, but very good research centers are there now. Very interesting thing for this one now, International Association for Sanskrit Studies. This is a global organization. Its head office now it is in Philadelphia, America. There they have central body guided by Indian people. Now our president is our Kutumba Shastriji and some Dandekar and all these are there now. But it is main center is it is in Philadelphia. Once in 3 years they conduct international conferences where all these research going on, that will be evaluated there. Recently it was in German, it was in Japan, recent international conference I think. Mm-hmm. And that previous conference it was in Heidelberg, mm-hmm. In Edinburgh, Scotland. There all in those places international conferences are held, Sanskrit international conferences are held. That is how so much research is going on. And the main focus now it is on science. Mm-hmm. That is the main thing now. Okay. So I visited Oxford there recently, 2010. There in Oxford University, they have very well furnished research center. They have their postdoctoral study centers. And there I could see that all great scholars, they are from their own country. No Indian is there. Many scholars are there. Though one thing is, it is difficult, it is clear that our people even now they have that highest caliber. Our brain is our brain. Nobody can compete with brain power as far as brain power is concerned. That much power we have, that we have inherited. That is why we have that one. But one thing is now in our country there is no proper motivation, no proper encouragement. So that scholars they lose interest.
Yeah.
And they have to beg for all those assistants. They have to go behind all these politicians. They have to wait for their mercy. That is why they lose their interest. In those countries, they never think of so much, and they get all these facilities from government side also, from other private bodies also. They get. That is why researchers are going on there.
Okay.
That is the difference now. Our big institutions now are on the edge of collapse. Now you see Bandakar Institute in Pune and Adyar Library in Chennai, Oriental Research Institute in Mysore, Oriental Research Institute in Baroda, Gujarat. They are all research centers. But now you can't see that now.
The rediscovery of the powerful scientific heritage is the need of the hour. The revival of this language of science can enlighten the country. But how feasible it is to revise the priorities?
Now, if you just give the state of language, it will not be accepted because it is too much loaded now at all school level. They have to go for their vernacular language, and English is compulsory. They have to go for national. This one they must study sometime in central schools. Hindi also compulsory. Where is the place for Sanskrit now? That is why Sanskrit now just if you give it just a language, people won't accept. Now only thing is that this is a cultural vehicle for Indian treasure house. You see, one just for example, if some Punjabi goes to America, or if some Tamilian goes to America, if some American asks them, what is your contribution to science? Where is that? It is in Sanskrit. You cannot see that type of books in any language, neither in Kannada nor in Tamil. What is your contribution to science and technology from your country? If this question is posed to anyone, starting from Kashmiri to Kanyakumari, you have to go to Sanskrit only. That is to be educated. That is to be made. Here we have to make our people aware. Now this is high time. Sanskrit must be made compulsory because Sanskrit is our cultural language. Sanskrit is our scientific language. Sanskrit is language of technology, ancient technology. Sanskrit is the language of science, pure science. Sanskrit is the language of pure science. Sanskrit is the pure vehicle of Indian ancient technology. Sanskrit is the vehicle for cultural heritage. These things must be made known to common men. But Sanskrit must be studied by one and all in India, starting from Kanyakumari to Himalaya, because it is their language of science. That is the language of their forefathers. That is the language of their technology. Because Dhatu Shastra you study in Sanskrit. Dhanush Shastra, how to make all instruments and ornaments also, you must study Sanskrit. That is how you have to educate people. This awareness must be brought.
What are the losses if Sanskrit is forgotten? The loss of Sanskrit will be the end of a brilliant scientific civilization. The glory of this great civilization will be a dim memory. Most of its memories, discoveries, ideas, and passions will be extinguished irrevocably. the loss for the future generations will be incalculable. The once exuberant Indian society needs to get its bearings back, and the first step towards that is to revive the language of culture, the language of science, the language of prosperity, the language of divinity.